Have you ever stopped to think, really think, about the invisible threads? The ones maybe pulling in our societies, kind of shaping our thoughts, influencing what we do.
Not just now in the digital age, but like stretching way back through history.
Exactly. What do we actually understand about how power works? How control operates? How populations have been influenced from, say, ancient Egypt right up to, well, right now.
It's a huge question. And yeah, it can feel a bit unsettling when you dig into it.
Well, today on the Deep Dive, that's exactly what we're doing. We're embarking on this pretty ambitious journey.
We're looking at a really compelling set of sources, sometimes quite disturbing, actually. They're titled The Legacy of Torture and Modern Social Control.
And our mission here, it's pretty big. We want to unpack some really provocative claims.
We're starting post 9/11, how those extreme interrogation methods weren't just random cruelty.
Right. They were actually rooted in specific psychological theories. Then we'll look at how they failed, catastrophically, in fact.
Yeah, how they inadvertently ended up fueling the very extremism they were meant to stop, even, contributing to the rise of groups like ISIS.
And then we follow that thread, this idea of social control, how that basic desire maybe to manage people might have morphed.
Evolved into something subtler, more pervasive in our world today.
Exactly. Including through the tech we use constantly, every single day.
And what's really striking about this material, I think, is how it connects things you wouldn't normally link. Events across huge spans of time.
We'll be looking at some bold claims, yeah. Historical parallels drawn right out.
And trying to trace this continuous line of control that, according to these sources, kind of weaves through centuries, from ancient myths to modern algorithms.
So this isn't just a history lesson. It's about connecting dots you might not have seen before.
Exploring the what-ifs. Some really uncomfortable truths in there.
And ultimately asking, okay, what does this actually mean for you right now?
Yeah. It's about thinking critically, looking past the obvious narratives.
So it's going to be intense, but hopefully really illuminating too. Let's dive in. Where do we start?
The immediate aftermath of 9/11, right?
Yeah, you have to go back there. To that specific moment, it was incredibly charged.
Our sources, they describe it as this dramatic, fast shift in the mindset of U.S. leadership.
Well, the nation was reeling, wasn't it?
Yeah.
An unprecedented attack on home soil.
So there was this atmosphere thick with shock, anger.
And a desperate need for a response. A decisive one. Urgency was everywhere.
If you put that in the wider context, the geopolitical picture.
The sources point to key figures, like Donald Rumsfeld, the defense secretary then.
Okay.
He was a major voice pushing for a very offensive strategy. That was the word used.
Offensive. Maybe.
Not just defense, not just reacting, but actively hunting terrorists globally, capturing them.
And this next part is crucial.
Yes. Attempting to reshape their behavior, that exact phrase.
Reshape their behavior. Wow. That's more than just getting information, isn't it? Oh, absolutely. It implies something much deeper, altering someone's identity, their core beliefs, maybe their loyalty.
It suggests this perceived need to fundamentally change the enemy, not just defeat them.
Which, given the climate of fear at the time.
That intense fear, that sense of existential threat, it could maybe justify that kind of aggressive, almost psychologically invasive approach.
That seems to be the argument. The goal wasn't just neutralizing a threat. It was breaking the will. Not just of individuals, maybe, but entire movements.
And that urgency, that drive to change someone's core. It feels like it created the perfect storm, didn't it, for extreme measures.
Pushing boundaries of what was acceptable before, the belief maybe was if you can change who they are, you eliminate the threat at its root.
And tragically, this mindset, this strategy, it led pretty quickly to things that shocked the world.
Abu Ghraib, that name just became instantly infamous.
Those images, they were everywhere. A U.S.-run prison in Iraq.
Where detainees faced just horrific abuse, physical, psychological torture. It was brutal.
And the public exposure, how did that happen?
Mostly through investigative reporting. CBS News played a big role. It just ignited this huge global scandal.
Right. And the initial reaction, officially.
Well, the initial narrative, often pushed by the military, was, oh, these are isolated incidents.
Rogue soldiers, a few bad apples, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Trying to contain it, frame it as an anomaly, not systemic.
But the sources we're looking at, they argue differently.
They detail how later revelations showed a much darker picture, a pattern, suggesting deliberate, sanctioned cruelty way beyond just a few individuals acting out.
That gap between the first story and the later truth, that's really key, isn't it?
It sets the stage for everything else,
Yeah.
because it wasn't just rogue soldiers.
And this is where it gets, well, institutionally sinister. Our sources say these weren't accidents, not cruelty by a few.
Far from it. It was designed.
How so?
Shockingly, 2 specific psychologists were apparently paid, get this, $80 million.
$80 million by the CIA.
By the CIA to actually design these torture programs.
Pause on that number. $80 million. That's not pocket change for a couple of rogue actions.
No, it signals a massive institutional investment, a commitment
It completely changes the frame, doesn't it? From accidental cruelty.
to a deliberate, professionally designed system for breaking people.
Which raises that deeply troubling question. What happens when science gets weaponized like that?
Yeah. When psychology, which we usually think of as helping people, is used to dismantle them systematically for strategic ends.
It feels like a fundamental ethical line being crossed at a very high level.
A deliberate crossing, it seems. Leveraging scientific understanding not to heal, but to break.
It's chilling. Turning science into a tool for subjugation. And the core theory they used, it had a name, right?
Yes. Learned helplessness.
Okay, can you unpack that a bit?
Yeah.
What is learned helplessness, and how did they think they could apply it in these prisons?
Sure. So learned helplessness comes from psychology experiments back in the 60s, usually with animals. They'd be exposed to something negative, like a shock, that they couldn't escape, no matter what they did.
Okay.
Over time, they just stopped trying. Even when later an escape route was provided, they'd learn their actions didn't matter, they were helpless.
So the idea in the prisons was to replicate that feeling.
Exactly. To systematically strip away any sense of control the prisoner had. Their agency, their belief they could affect their situation.
To break their spirit, essentially. Make them totally compliant.
That was the goal. Dismantle their will to resist.
How would that actually work in practice? What kinds of things would induce that?
It's a combination of things. Relentless, unpredictable stress. Think constant noise, then sudden silence. Extreme temperatures, hot then cold.
Total loss in control.
Over everything. Sleep deprivation for days. Forced stress positions for hours. Denial of basic bodily functions. Total unpredictability.
And degrading conditions, too.
Oh, absolutely. Forced nudity, sexual humiliation.
Yeah.
Anything to erode self-respect and dignity.
So every single element was designed to hammer home the message. You have no control. Your will is irrelevant.
Precisely. Systematically grinding down their sense of self, replacing it with resignation, to achieve that goal of reshaping behavior.
By just dismantling their will, leaving them vulnerable.
Theoretically, yes, more susceptible to interrogators.
It sounds like a horrifyingly precise, systematic process. Just taking a person apart. And the sources, they draw a symbolic link here, don't they? Something quite ancient.
They do, and it's quite dark. They connect this psychological goal to ancient Egyptian mythology.
Which myth?
The idea of turning Ra into Osiris.
Ra, the sun god. Power, defiance.
Exactly. The hero, the symbol of power, vitality, light, the triumphant king.
And Osiris.
Osiris, after he's murdered and dismembered by his brother Set, he represents the broken, passive victim, utter defeat, loss of power, fragmentation.
So the goal was to symbolically kill the prisoner's spirit, their defiance, turn their inner Ra into Osiris.
That's the interpretation offered, to reduce them to that state of psychological helplessness. It's almost ritualistic, the way it's framed.
Wow, it suggests such a deep understanding of power dynamics, drawing on these ancient archetypes.
It goes beyond just getting intel. It's about breaking not just a body, but a spirit. A symbolic annihilation.
The sheer audacity of using that kind of metaphor, it's breathtaking. It implies this disturbing level of intent.
And a belief in the power of these methods may be echoing ancient practices of breaking powerful figures.
But did it work? Did this dark science actually achieve what they wanted?
According to the sources, unequivocally no.
It didn't make them compliant, didn't pacify them.
Quite the opposite in many cases. It failed. Utterly failed, even by its own brutal standards.
That's critical, isn't it? The practice didn't deliver, even on its own terms.
It seems to underscore a massive miscalculation about human resilience, how people actually react to that kind of extreme pressure. It didn't break them in the way intended.
And the consequences weren't just failure, they were much worse.
Far worse, and deeply ironic. The sources make this truly staggering claim.
What is?
That many future members of ISIS, they weren't just radicalized, but actively forged, empowered inside those U.S.-controlled prisons.
Wait, so the places designed to stop terrorism actually became incubators for it?
That's the argument. Instead of pacifying, the methods actively fueled the very extremism they were supposed to combat.
That's a catastrophic backfire.
A profound example of policy failure with global, long-lasting consequences. The very attempt to control to break spirits.
It created a crucible.
Exactly, where radical ideas could fester, consolidate, shared suffering, a common enemy. It forged powerful bonds.
Grievances amplified.
Hugely. People who might have been disparate outside found common cause. Leaders emerged, using the shared trauma to solidify radical narratives, recruit, organize.
So these detention centers became like unintended extremist academies.
That's the disturbing picture painted, providing the ideology, the networks that would later define ISIS. Instead of dismantling the threat, they escalated it, exponentially.
Chillingly ironic. The effort to suppress inadvertently fuels the resurgence.
Yeah.
And the symbolism.
Yeah.
It keeps coming back.
It does. The sources point out the name Isis itself. It links directly back to that same Egyptian myth.
How so? Isis the goddess.
She's the one who resurrects Osiris, painstakingly gathers his dismembered parts, brings him back to life, ushers in a new era.
So the name Isis is like a direct symbolic response to the attempt to turn them into Osiris.
That's the chilling interpretation. A response to the attempt to break them, dismember their spirit. The name itself signifies resurrection, rebirth.
Suggesting that torture didn't destroy extremism.
But in this twisted, symbolic way, it rebirthed it. More potent, more vengeful, more organized.
And maybe the prisoners themselves understood this symbolism.
Yeah.
Used it.
It suggests a deep awareness, yeah. A narrative of resilience emerging directly from the attempt at control, echoing those ancient myths of rebirth after suffering.
It's a powerful, deeply disturbing thought that the methods provided the symbolic fuel. It really makes you wonder what was going on inside those chambers. What were they really aiming for?
And the sources are graphic about the specifics. The testimonies from former detainees.
What kind of details emerge?
Harrowing stuff. Violent force-feeding, often nasally. Designed to be painful, humiliating.
Waterboarding.
Widespread reports of that. Drowning simulations. Inducing sheer terror, the feeling of imminent death. Extreme psychological trauma.
And other things?
Use of power drills.
Like.
Not necessarily to injure, but for psychological terror, implying maiming.
And the humiliation.
Repeated sexual humiliation. Forced nudity, assaults, desecration of holy texts. Anything to strip away dignity, identity, self-respect. Attacking their core being to reinforce that helplessness.
Specific, deliberate cruelty. Not abstract. And there's another historical parallel mentioned about breaking pharaohs.
Yes, the claim is these specific rituals echoed ancient Egyptian practices of breaking pharaohs.
What's it suggest?
A much longer lineage for these control methods. That maybe the architects of the modern programs drew inspiration, consciously or not, from ancient subjugation techniques.
Implying these aren't new ideas, just repackaged.
Potentially. Which asks, what does that say about the enduring human impulse to control? And the belief in these kinds of methods across millennia, a disturbing continuity.
And then we reach maybe the most startling claim of all.
Yeah.
That the goal wasn't just intel or even breaking spirits.
No. The sources assert, astonishingly, that the goal was to engineer terrorists as programmable drones.
Programmable drones. What does that even mean?
It takes reshaping behavior to a terrifying extreme. It implies an aim far beyond just getting information.
Like creating. What? Controllable assets.
Potentially. Individuals whose wills are so broken, personalities so dismantled that they could be reprogrammed, directed for some specific hidden purpose.
What purpose do the sources say?
They don't explicitly detail it, which forces us to speculate. Double agents, informants with altered loyalties, something even darker, controlling future conflicts by manipulating the players.
It moves way beyond interrogation into deep human manipulation, altering identity itself.
It's a deeply unsettling proposition, questioning the ethics, the capabilities, the ultimate aims.
A huge conceptual leap. And this idea, this level of manipulation, it connects to something else, a historical precedent.
Explicitly, yes. The sources draw a direct line from these post-9/11 programs back to the CIA's infamous Project MKUltra.
From the 1950s and 60s.
That's the one. The connection suggests this isn't isolated. It's part of a consistent, if clandestine, thread of government-funded psychological experimentation.
So not just a response to 9/11, but maybe drawing on or descending from earlier mind control attempts.
That's the implication, a troubling historical legacy. These projects seem to reappear, maybe under different names, when national security is invoked.
How far back does it go? How embedded is this impulse?
Those are the questions it raises, challenging the idea that these are just temporary responses to crises.
And MK Ultra itself. That was seriously disturbing, wasn't it?
Deeply unethical, the sources detailed the kinds of experiments. It was a systematic attempt to control the mind.
Through what methods?
A shocking range. Experiments with LSD, other psychoactive drugs, often given to people without their knowledge or consent.
Unwitting subject.
Yes. Trying to find truth serums, methods for behavioral control. They also heavily investigated hypnosis.
Hypnosis. To control people.
Could people be compelled to act against their will? Could memories be erased or implanted? That's what they explored.
And brainwashing.
That was a major focus. Trying to fundamentally change beliefs, memories, even personality. The sheer range, the ethical violations, it's staggering. A government-backed effort disregarding human rights.
And it wasn't just happening in the U.S.
No, and this is crucial. The sources highlight international collaboration, working with foreign intelligence agencies to conduct experiments abroad that were illegal under U.S. law. A deliberate circumvention of legal and ethical boundaries.
Using legal loopholes.
Exactly. Operating in less regulated environments. Pushing the envelope with plausible deniability.
And some of the setups were, well, bizarre, like something from a spy film.
The sources mention things like drug-laced brothels.
Seriously? To test control methods?
Apparently. Exploiting vulnerable people to test drugs and manipulation techniques in real-world scenarios. It shows a chilling lack of ethics, an obsession with control.
Truly horrifying. And the key link, the connection across decades. MK Ultra was exposed, supposedly ended.
In the 1970s, yes. But the sources allege its techniques allegedly resurfaced post 9/11 in counterterrorism.
So ended doesn't really mean ended.
That's a crucial suggestion. These projects might not be dismantled. Maybe they just evolve, adapt, go dormant.
And reappear when the perceived need arises again.
With new justifications, new technologies, it implies this disturbing continuity of knowledge, methodology, and maybe that underlying impulse for ultimate control within certain clandestine parts of the state.
So if these methods didn't end in the prisons, and they have this lineage back to MK Ultra, the sources argue they're still around, but differently.
Yes, this is where the argument expands dramatically into our everyday lives. They argue these control methods persist today, just in more subtle, pervasive forms, less overtly violent.
How so? What forms?
They point to pharmaceuticals and psychology as modern tools, which needs careful discussion, right? It's moving from torture to more integrated societal mechanisms.
How might drugs or psychology be seen as control? We usually think of them as helping.
Well, consider the medicalization of human experience. Sadness becomes depression. Restlessness becomes ADHD. Now, these diagnoses and treatments absolutely help many people.
Of course.
But the frameworks themselves can also shape norms, define what's normal or deviant, maybe influence our capacity for dissent. If certain feelings are quickly pathologized and medicated, does it subtly narrow the range of acceptable responses to, say, societal problems? Does it nudge people towards passive acceptance rather than questioning?
So not overt coercion, but shaping our internal landscape to maintain equilibrium.
That's one interpretation offered, shaping us from the inside out.
That's a powerful idea, and then they bring in something even closer to home for most of us.
Social media, platforms like Twitter X, Facebook, highlighted as key modern tools of control.
Okay, we hear about filter, bubbles, algorithms, but there's a deeper claim here.
A really interesting critical detail. While private companies run these platforms, the sources claim the underlying infrastructure they rest on was built by the U.S. military.
Wait, the actual infrastructure, the physical network.
That's the claim. It shifts the perspective, doesn't it? Beyond just corporate influence.
It does. The internet itself started as ARPANET, a military project.
Exactly. Which suggests a foundational intent, perhaps beyond just communication.
So what does that military origin imply? Potential oversight, influence, even if companies run it now.
It raises that question. Was there a deeper, maybe original, intent for control built into the architecture? Capabilities for surveillance, data collection, population management, even if secondary at first?
So maybe the whole system, even its commercial form, was always potentially dual use, communication and subtle management.
Through access to data, algorithmic nudges shaping what we see, creating echo chambers that define our reality. It's speculation, but it makes you think about the digital bedrock we live on.
That is, yeah, that's a mind-bending connection. The fabric of our digital lives potentially rooted in that military-industrial
Yeah.
complex. And this all leads to the biggest claim, the one tying it all together.
The most provocative one, yes. That citizens today. We are the new pharaohs, metaphorically speaking.
The new pharaohs, meaning.
Controlled, not by chains, not by torture, but through sophisticated manipulation. Media, drugs, psychology, tech.
So, back to the Egyptian symbolism again.
Full circle. It suggests the methods have evolved dramatically physical coercion to insidious psychological tech.
But the fundamental desire for social control remains. It's constant.
That's the powerful argument. The metaphor implies that while we feel free, powerful forces are subtly shaping our reality, directing our attention, influencing our emotions and behaviors.
Like learned helplessness, but on a societal scale.
It resonates strongly with that, yes. Subtle, pervasive influences, personalized algorithms, maybe leading us to accept things, reducing our capacity for independent thought, critical questioning, collective resistance.
It's a profound critique. Control becoming more sophisticated, more invisible, harder to even recognize, let alone resist.
Exactly, integrated into the fabric of life.
It definitely makes you stop and look at your own phone, your own news feed, maybe even your own thoughts differently.
But, and this is really important, the original source, the lecturer, adds a crucial caution
Okay.
that these are theories and speculations, not presented as definitive proven truths.
That's vital, isn't it, for critical thinking?
Absolutely. It lets us explore these ideas as provocative interpretations, frameworks for understanding, without just accepting them as fact.
Right.
It invites you, the listener, to weigh it, connect the dots yourself. Informed inquiry, not blind acceptance.
Right. We're presenting these as a framework for deeper thought, not as gospel. But even with that caution, there's a consistent thread the sources identify.
Yes. Despite the speculation in some claims, the consistent theme throughout history, they argue, is that societies, ancient or modern, tend to prioritize social control above almost everything else.
That really ties it all together.
It's the synthesis, whether it's overt torture, post-9/11, MK Ultra's experiments decades ago, or subtle manipulation via digital platforms today.
The drive to manage, direct, influence populations. It seems constant.
The fundamental intent hasn't changed much, perhaps, only the tools evolved. More sophisticated, less visible, more integrated.
From physical force to psych conditioning, ancient rituals to military-built social media.
The underlying impulse to maintain order, exert influence, shape consciousness. It seems to be a powerful, persistent force. It's sobering, makes you want to be vigilant, critically aware.
What a journey today. We went from post-9/11 torture programs designed by psychologists using learned helplessness, echoing ancient myths.
And saw how they backfired, radicalizing future ISIS members, maybe even symbolically rebirthing extremism.
Then we looked back at MK Ultra's shadow. Mind control, drugs, unethical experiments, international loopholes, with its techniques allegedly resurfacing.
And finally, landed on this provocative idea of control today, through pharmaceuticals, psychology, and social media built on military infrastructure, influencing us in ways we might barely perceive.
The new pharaohs, living in this tech-mediated world.
It really challenges you, doesn't it, to look past the surface narratives, to question the forces shaping our world.
It's about being informed, not just what happens, but why and how these control patterns play out, recognizing that hidden web of influence. So the final thought then. If the methods of control have mainly just evolved their tools, but the underlying intent remains, what does that really mean for our own agency, our freedom, especially now in this super-connected, tech-driven world?
Yeah. What forms of social control might we be living under right now that we haven't even started to recognize, or that we've just accepted as normal, as just the way things are?
It's a huge question. A call for critical vigilance, maybe, and definitely something worth pondering long after this deep dive ends.